today. We will be with you from 11 to 2. It will be long. But we know you're going to be engaged and you're going to walk away with a wealth of knowledge. So after every speaker, we will allow 15 minutes for a question and answer session. So that way, if you have those questions, you don't have to wait to ask. And then we will go into the next speaker. At the end of the entire session, when all three speakers have spoken, we will open up again for another live interactive question session for those burning questions that you may have. But please, feel free at any time to ask your questions in the chat, as I and a couple of other members of the chapter will be moderating, as well as the speakers. We will be looking from time to time to answer any questions that you may have. We thank you for joining us, and we will begin. So once again, my name is Tawana Lane. I am your moderator, and I will start to introduce the speakers. So the introduction of the speakers today, we will have Wills and Trusts, which will be presented to by Mrs. L'Antoinella Spillaretic. She's the owner and founder of Spillaretic Immigration Law, PLLC, a boutique immigration trademark and family law firm operating out of Central Virginia. Delivering insurance for us today is Mrs. Tanoa Morgan. She is a founder and president of Ms. Insurance Agency. She is dedicated to helping families build a strong financial foundation. And she's the second speaker today will be Healthcare Directors, which is Mrs. Coretta Skelton, and she's a licensed clinical social worker who has served in the state of Maryland for over 15 years. And our closing remarks, I will come back with closing remarks. So please sit back, enjoy the day. Once again, you will have time to ask questions. Please use the chat, and we can't wait to see you. We also will be recording this session that we will play back on our Facebook page, so in case you missed anything. Thank you for joining us. And the first speaker, Mrs. L'Antoinella Spillaretic, you are up.
Thank you, Tawana. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. If we can just go back to that first slide real quick.
Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was saying. So what I said was, if at any moment you couldn't hear me or I froze up because I'm out in the country, give me a flurry of hands to let me know. But I was saying before that, I am honored to be here today. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this session. It is timely. My name is L'Antoinella. Sorors know me as Lala, and I'm an attorney, and I'm going to give you just a quick little story about my background. So I started my law practice in 2013, and that was about almost 20 years or so, including college time after, being employed by the federal government. And what happened in 2013, August 2013, when I started my law practice, well, that was 11 months after I had my daughter. So what happened before that was my after maternity plan didn't quite work out the way I thought it would, right? I returned to the office and things weren't the way I thought they were going to be upon my return. And so I decided, well, goodbye. I'm going to spend some time with my child and then just open up my own law practice in Virginia. And prior to me opening up my own law practice in Virginia, I was employed by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So that is basically why I started my practice as an immigration law firm. That was one reason, because I was just recently employed by immigration, right? The other reason is, and this is important, and we'll get to it why in just a moment, is that I received my law license initially from the District of Columbia, but I was residing in Virginia. And what that means is, if you have a law license from one state or district, but you're practicing law in another state or district, you need to make sure you're doing that correctly, right? So I lived in Virginia, so I could not practice, say, family law at the time. I could practice immigration law because immigration law is federal law. There are certain laws that fall under the umbrella of federal law, which means you can practice them in any states. And there are certain laws that fall under the umbrella of family law. Make a long story short, 2013, when I opened my practice, it was primarily immigration with a small percentage of trademark, okay? But in 2019, I was admitted to the Virginia bar, and I expanded my law practice into family law and estate planning, which were two things I thoroughly enjoyed when I was attending law school. So today we are going to primarily discuss wills, and I will touch on trust. One caveat you all must know, if you don't already know, one caveat is that wills and trusts are governed by your state, all right? So if I go into any specifics, it may be just regarding the state of Virginia, but I can absolutely speak to the generalities of wills throughout all the states. Today, we are going to talk about what is a will, why you should have a will, what happens if you don't have a will, any key items or things you want to start thinking about and considering as you're planning or creating your will. And all in all, the purpose would be to provide you with a road map of your desires for your loved ones after you're no longer here, okay? We don't want to think about our mortality. We don't want to think about death. We tend to not want to write down anything negative on paper, right? But we're not going to live forever. Tomorrow is not promised. So wouldn't it be great to relieve some of the burden from our loved ones after we've passed on? Wouldn't it be great if we can provide them with a roadmap, with a plan of our final wishes and desires? This way, at least, they'll know where to begin, okay? There will be questions and answers at the end, as Tawana has stated, and we encourage you to use the chat feature to submit your questions. I will answer what I can. Who knows, we might have another one of these later. One last thing before we officially begin, I just want to also just say, I find this seminar today to be quite timely, just with all that's going on in the world today. This Thursday, I had an opportunity to moderate an intimate session with my church. We call it Huddle Up, right? And this session had to deal with social justice. And I'll be quick, and you'll understand how this ties into our wills preparation discussion today. So justice is defined as the quality of being fair and reasonable, right? Social justice is defined as justice in the terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, privileges within a society. Today, we are empowering our community with education. Today, we are contributing towards shared knowledge, and knowledge is power, right? Today, I hope you will walk away with a clearer understanding of why it is important to have an estate management plan. All right, so let's begin. What is a will? Well, in lay terms, a will is a way to make your wishes known regarding what you want to happen with your property and with your assets after you die. From this point forward, I'm just going to say after you pass on, okay? The goal being no family feuds, right? Okay, we might not be able to succeed at that goal, but that is a goal, all right? Now, what is a will not in lay terms? Let me give you a more legalistic reading. A will is a written legal document that states what you want done about various topics after you die. A will can include your wishes about what happens to your belongings, which is called the estate, and about who will care for any minor children. When you make a will, you are called the testator. In the will, you should state who you want to carry out the instructions in the will. That person is called the personal representative, and sometimes that person is also called the executor. You may have heard that term, right? Executor of your will. A person who receives a gift from your estate, so someone who's named in your will to receive something, is called a beneficiary. And a will only becomes effective when it is signed by you and witnessed with certain formalities, right? Unless you revoke your will, it will control what is done with your estate. So let's just go back to those last couple of lines. A will must be signed. And in most instances, your signature must be witnessed. Now, how many witnesses? That depends on your state, okay? And when you draft a will that you have drafted, that will that you signed, that will that you had witnessed will be your will until you later revoke it or change it, all right? We're still back there. All right, so do you need a lawyer to draft a will? No, but you probably should get one. Reason being, there are certain requirements that are necessary and needed to ensure that your will is valid. Why take all the time to go ahead and list out all your wishes and desires, right? And do all of that if in fact it turns out you did not do the proper requirements to ensure that your will is valid. So on this screen right here, you see the word holographic wills. Let me explain that to you. A holographic will is a will that is written entirely by your hand and you sign it. Some states recognize this. It does not need to be witnessed. The problem with holographic wills is that they can be contested, right? If there's no witness to it, one of your heirs, one of your family members, or someone who thinks that they were deserving or supposed to receive something in your will can contest the handwritten will that you did for yourself without any witnesses and say, well, how do we know she wrote this? How do we know that's her signature? You know, it can be contested. In Virginia, holographic wills are acceptable. In Maryland, I believe they're only acceptable for members of the military, and I'm not quite sure about DC, but it's somewhere to start. It's not the best option, okay, because it can be a little tricky, but in some states, you can simply write your will by hand, fully by hand, sign it yourself, and that's it. Now, whenever you go to type your will, in all three of the DMV, right? When you go to type your will, there are requirements as far as the number of witnesses that need to witness your signature on that will. Now we're going to talk about the general components, and we can go to the next screen of what you should have in your will. But just before that, where should you keep your will? And we can keep it on this screen. Where should you keep your will? You should keep it in your home, all right? Some of us think about putting it in a safety deposit box. Actually, that's not the best idea, because getting into that safety deposit box can be very difficult after you've passed on. If your trusted loved one or family member who should have access to your will does not have access to your safety deposit box, your estate's going to have a problem. So some of the recommended places are maybe a lockbox in your house, a safe in your house, but you want to ensure and make sure that someone knows where your will is, okay? All right, so what we have right here is just an example of Jane Doe's will. This is just a 4-pager, quick little will. And we are providing this to you so you can just see the ordering of it, right? What it looks like. So you'll see at the top, it says, last will and testament of Jane Doe. In the next line, she mentions who she is. I, J. Doe of Fredericksburg, Virginia, make this will, and I revoke any other wills or codicils made by me. A will is a full document outlining your instructions regarding what should happen to your estate after your passing. A codicil is a way to amend a portion of a will that you've already written, okay? So you don't always have to write a whole new one. If something changes in your life after you drafted a will and you just want to add a little something regarding that, you'll speak with the lawyer, but you can add your change by amendment, also known as codicil, okay? The next part of the will generally talks about who's in your family. That's when you talk about who you consider to be your family, right? And in Jane Doe's will, she talks about how many children she has and that she's not married. The next part, which is Article 2, talks about the distribution of her estate. This means how she wants her estate, her property, her things, her items, her real estate to be divided. Now, you're going to talk about tangible property, real estate, right? Homes, houses, things like that, investments, and other types of property. Yes. And then the next part in B, right there under Article 2, we'll see a little specific caveat that Jane wanted to make known. So A basically says she's giving everything to one child, even though she has two, she's giving everything to one child. And individuals may do this for various reasons. For example, in Jane's reason, or in Jane's will, she had an older child, and she assumed that her older child would take care of the younger child should anything happen. Okay, so instead of her making it clear that she wants to divide up her property evenly between both children, she said, no, I'm going to give it to the more mature child, and I expect she's going to take care of my younger child, her sibling. But she wanted to be real specific about what she was going to do with her ABC sorority membership pin. Okay, so that's why in item B, she says she's going to make sure she sends our ABC sorority membership pin back to ABC sorority headquarters. So in your will, you can definitely be specific about certain items that you want certain people to have upon your passing. You can also disinherit people if in fact that's something that you want to do, okay? So for example, in your will, you're going to state who makes up your family and which members of your family you want to give whatever it is you want to give to them. If in fact there's a member of your family that you want to make it clear that they get nothing, you can put that in your will, all right? Let's see. What you don't need to do, and I'll jump over to page number 2 on this slide in a moment. What you don't need to do in your will is to list out each and every bank account or how you want your burial or final rights to go. You don't need to list that out in your actual will document. What you can do is make a second document that your executor will look at, that will guide your executor, right? You can make a second document with the listing of your bank accounts, investment accounts, specific property that you might have mentioned in your will that you want to go to John or Tawana or Lontuanella. Okay, you can make a list of where they can find those items, but you don't have to write that type of detail in the will. Now on the second page we have, okay, on the second page where we see D and E and F and G, in D we talk about whether or not we're going to include people as members of our family who may have been adopted, right? So your will really allows you to specifically identify who you consider your heirs to be. And we're going to explain why that is important in a moment. Because if you don't identify who your heirs are, then the state will get involved. Okay, in Article 3, it talks about payments of expenses and other charges. So your executor, which is the trusted person that you will have decided to fulfill the instructions of this document, right? You're going to direct your executor or allow your executor to use certain funds, maybe from your estate, to pay off needs of your estate, such as taxes or whatever they determine to be necessary and required to fulfill your wishes, including your funeral and your cremation expenses. Let's go down to the next slide. And I see we have some questions coming through, so we'll definitely get to those. All right, so in this slide here, you see appointment of fiduciaries and powers. So right here in paragraph A is where we name who our executor is going to be. Now for Jane, she named her daughter. My recommendation is that you don't want to name your executor, or you don't want to name someone who's going to be a beneficiary. That means someone who's going to inherit from your will as your executor. It's not necessarily a conflict of legal interest, but it just can be a conflict of heart interest, right? They already have enough to deal with your passing and all of that. It's not necessarily best practice to name a beneficiary as your executor, but you can, because perhaps you feel as though the most trusted person you have that you would believe would actually fulfill the instructions that you have provided in your will is one of your children, your older children, or someone that you will leave something to in your will. So here she names her daughter as her executor, right? And on paragraph B, she also allows her executor, which is normal to do, the ability to compensate themselves for time spent in fulfilling the terms or the instructions of this will. Sometimes the executor could be a lawyer, okay? It could be the lawyer that drafted the will. And right here in paragraph B, it basically says, you as the testator, the writer of the will, authorize the lawyer or the executor to go ahead and compensate themselves for the time at a reasonable rate that it takes for them to fulfill the instructions of your will. The middle part of the page you see that's highlighted, that is basically where she's going to sign. And you want to make it clear how many pages are in this will, right? You don't want someone to slip something in there. So you'll see that it says this will is consisting of, there's an underline, so blank number of typewritten pages. We have the date that is signed and she's going to sign. And then those lines on the bottom reflect where the witnesses will sign, and the of reflects where they live. So if anybody needs to go back and find those witnesses, and you know, if the will goes and gets disputed, there's a legal battle, you can go back to the witnesses and talk to them about what they witnessed. And then this last page is just good and common practice. Wills generally do not need to be notarized, but it's a good practice, okay? So we tend to notarize the wills that we do. Yeah. Okay, so what happens if you don't have a will? Nothing good. Next slide. Okay, well, we can do this slide. All right, so how about this? Let's see if you all have any idea what this statistic relates to. I am going to look at the chat to see if anybody has any idea what this 3242 statistic relates to. What are they talking about here? Just wait a few seconds. Love it. I see Black folks to white folks having a will, percentage of wills contested, number of people who have wills, people versus without wills. Very good, very good. So yes, 32 reflects the number of Black folks or African Americans in the United States as of 2018, I believe, that had a will, whereas 42% of non-Black folks had a will in the United States. So good job, good job. All right, we can move on to the next slide.
Miss Antonella.
Yes, ma'am.
Lala. So one of the questions that came up is, if you have side children, a couple of people have side children, how do they get access to money, or how should they mark whether or not a person get access? How do you count for your children that were maybe been born out of wedlock?
Side children. So
that's what they said. I had some side babies.
Okay.
Side babies meaning they might have been born out of wedlock. And so how do you make sure that those children on the side can also be included?
Oh yeah, so you put it in your will, right? So if at the time you draft your will, you've had these side children, or you've had other children maybe outside of your current relationship, you can put that in your will. You know, if we were to go back to Jane Doe's will, on the first page of her will, she mentions all of her children, right, that she knows, but you can also mention in your will any children that come later, okay, if that's what you want to do. Your will is your personal document. You do not have to get it approved by your current spouse or anybody else. That is your document. You do want to make sure that a trusted person knows where it is so that they can go and find it upon your passing, right? So to include all of your children, and maybe a child over here that nobody knows about necessarily, or a child that was conceived out of your current relationship, you may name that child in your will. That is your right if that is your desire. You name them in your will. and you specified what it is you want to leave to them or what portion of your assets you believe that they should have. So in your will, you can define whether or not you want to leave an equal share to all of your children, or you want to leave an equal share to all of your children of your current relationship, right? And a half share. You specify all of that in your will. And those go into a little bit more details, but the long and short of it is you can put that in your will, okay?
One last question before you move on into this slide into trust. Two last questions.
Well, not trust, we skipped the
We haven't done trust yet, I know.
Yeah, the cautionary tale, but yeah, go ahead.
Before you move on, one other question was, so it sounds like the wife doesn't know about the husband's side kids. What if the child is not in the will?
Yeah, so if the child is not in the will, then we have to look at the will to see if that will specifically excluded additional people who may consider themselves to be heirs, but who are not presently accounted for in the will. Okay.
And it's important that you tell your family about where your will is, so there are no surprises. What's in your will and where they are.
That's up to you. That is really up to you.
Okay, I'll move into this next slide. Wills, what happened?
Which is another reason why it may behoove you not to name a family member or a beneficiary, right, as your executor, so you can have that conversation with an impartial person who will understand what's in your will before even the time comes, right? And understand your wishes a little bit better. But in your will, you can include children, you can exclude certain family members. Now, some of this may vary by state, but you definitely can do it, okay? You definitely can do it in Virginia. And this is why, and this is going to carry us over to our next slide, okay? The cautionary tale. This is exactly why you do want to have a will. Okay, cautionary tale, the artist, right? He passed away 57 years old in 2016 without a will. My understanding is that he had 6 siblings, 1 full sibling, and the rest were half. When you have no will, what does this mean? This means that your estate, everything that you worked hard for, will be divided up by the laws of your state, okay? So what I read was that when it came to Prince's will, lack thereof, okay, it was determined that his estate would be divided up by his 6 siblings, all right? Was that his wish? We don't know. But it was determined that it would be divided up by his 6 siblings. Now, in Minnesota, I also believe that it didn't matter the relationship to Prince, meaning were they full siblings or half siblings, right? So in Minnesota, they just divided up the idea, and I think it's still not done yet, but the plan was to divide it up equally between all 6 siblings. Whereas say in California, full sibling versus a half sibling, if the state gets involved, your portion is different. Half siblings portion is less. This is again why you want to have a will, right? Because you want to be the declarant. You want to decide how and to whom your state goes, right? How it's divided up, who gets it, how much they get. If you wanted to give 75% to your big sister and 10% to your little brother, that is your choice, but you have to write that out, right? Or else the state will get involved. And in his case, unfortunately, the state has got involved. They've lost a lot of money. When you don't have a will, your property goes into probate. And what this means is the court has to figure it out. Your family suffer. A lot of time and money is wasted, okay? Now, not to say that even if you have a will, your family still won't suffer, but ideally they'll suffer a little bit less. People contest wills all the time. Sometimes it still may go to court, right? But at least you have that legal document that specifies what your wishes are. And even if it is determined for some reason that your will is not valid, right? Well, the individual who will be determined to be your administrator, and that's who will make the plans for your estate and divide everything up if you don't have a will. The person who is determined to be your administrator may take that invalid will or whatever writing you have provided as information, as guidance for them on what it is they need to do to fulfill your wishes or your desires, or to divide up your estate in the best way that they see possible, in a reasonable way.
Okay, Sora Lawn Twinella.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Villarreal, another question that I just dropped in your chat box is, hopefully that doesn't happen, but what happens if the executor does execute the will line by line? Will the bennies then have to sort the matter out in court?
Okay, if the executor does not execute the will line by line?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll need to go to court. And they have the right to do that. They'll have to go to court. It's a back and forth thing. Yes. If the beneficiaries, because the will is not a secret document, okay? If you're a named beneficiary, then you should have an opportunity to see or hear. Sometimes you're authorized to hear it read to you. Sometimes you can see a copy, okay? If you feel it is not being executed in the manner that it should be, if you feel that the executor is actually not fulfilling the true intention of the words written in that document, then you get a lawyer.
And then I'm going to move you to the next slide. And before I do that, should the will, Miss Pamela Jenkins asks, should the will be submitted to the Registrar of Wills in courts?
You can do that. That's an option. It's not a requirement, but it is an option. In some states, that may be a requirement. It's not a requirement in Virginia, but that is an option.
And your next slide is going to answer the question was, what's the difference between a wills and trust? But your next slide, once you summarize, is going to talk about that. So will is a summary.
Okay. And so another thing I just want to mention is, we all have different types of families, right? Sometimes we get new members into our families. Consider if you were a grandparent and your child, you have a child who has a spouse and you have grandchildren, right? And then maybe your child brings on a new spouse and new grandchildren. Depending on your relationship, you might have a certain feeling as far as how you want your estate, your assets, your property to be divided up among your older grandchildren, okay? And if you still want anything to go to their mother, assuming your child was a boy, and then how you want your estate to be provided or given to your newer grandchildren, if there are any grandchildren, or to that new spouse. So there are just all of these different aspects and, paths and things that can happen in your life that if you sit down and think about it and write it out, at least there's a plan in place for the division of your property. All right, so best practices, yes, everyone should have a will. Let your trusted and loved ones know the location of your will. You can handwrite your will. Not the best thing, but you can do it, okay? You may update it by codicil, which is an amendment to your will, or you just replace it in whole, in totality, which is, depending on the circumstances, might be the better thing. Some people write their wills before they have children or before they're grandparents, right? And now 30, 40 years later, so much has changed. It's probably time for a new will, okay? I wanted to also let you know what does not pass under a will. And some of our other speakers are going to talk to this, but there are certain things that you can't change the rules for in a will, such as jointly owned property, right? Marital property, or a car that's jointly owned, or bank accounts that have joint owners, life insurance proceeds, whoever you have listed on your 401k as a beneficiary or pension. There are certain things that you cannot change who the beneficiary will be or who will get it by will. All right, will recap. Let's see, I have it here. A will is a declaration of what you want in writing to happen to your property and your assets. It's instructions. Now, a trust allows you or your designee to use your wealth according to your instructions. Okay. So wills and trusts serve the same basic purpose, namely to transfer your assets to your designated heirs after you die. The main difference is that a will is simply a set of instructions about the distribution of your assets to be implemented after your death, after you pass. Whereas a trust allows you or someone you designate as your legal representative to use your wealth, to use your assets according to your instructions, even while you're alive. Just things to consider. We'll talk more later. I will pass the mic on.
So here's the question time. We've been asking, we've been stopping to ask some questions, but we wanted to give you time to actually ask specific questions, or really general questions in a way that can assist everyone who's attending. So one of the questions that I see that are general is, do beneficiaries receive a copy of the will or trust?
No.
Okay. And
they can, but generally, no, that's not just standard practice to give them a copy of the will. Okay, no.
Another thing, we'll use this time also for, I've been asking some of the questions that's in there, but if you wish, we'll allow you to go ahead and raise your hand. You'll see a chat. One can see my participant screen here, where you can actually click find participant, and you should see a reaction where you can actually raise your hand. My screen is a little tight, so I can't see everything, but you should see a section where you can actually raise your hand. And if you have some questions, we'll call on you if you did not feel like utilizing the chat room.
Now, if I may, I see a comment in the chat where.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, you saw that where Tawana Reed mentions that if you check with your company benefits, there are multiple services such as wills and trusts that may be available to you at low or reasonable costs. And that is correct. There are various organizations that may be able to help you out. I wouldn't advise you just trying to go it alone yourself, but I would advise you to take a moment and sit down and just think about your plan, your ideas. Think about your family. Think about your assets. What do you have? Who do you want to leave your items to? What is and although I said this is not specifically part of your will, but what is your going home service plan or idea? Because if you have something specific that you want, it is very helpful and nice to make that known to your family members so that they don't have to figure that out, right? They don't have to figure out what outfit or what song or what verse, or if it's cremation or burial, if you haven't talked about that already.
Okay, I'm not able to hear clearly. So, Ms. Hunt Brown, are you saying that you cannot? Okay, thank you, Madam President. Okay, are there any more questions? I don't.
There's a raised hand.
Michael Johnson?
Yes, thank you. Can you just go back? It sounded like you were saying there is a relationship between the trust and the will. Can you just quickly go back and summarize that again?
Yes, I totally can do that for you. Okay. So the trust, right? The trust is basically you are naming an individual or entity. You are naming an individual or entity, and you are giving them the expressed authorization or right to use part of your wealth or your assets to do a certain thing, right? People can set up trust to take care of children. People can set up trust to take care of a pet. People can set up a trust that will be provided to, or a child will have access to specifically for, let's say, educational or higher learning expenses, okay? The trust can be part of your whole will process. One good thing about trust is that they do not go into probate. So basically, a trust is a document where you are specifying that you want let's say like this, you want this pot of money to be used for this specific purpose. And it could be done during your lifetime or after your lifetime, okay? And you are saying who you want to be able to access that pot of money or those assets to fulfill whatever directions or the purpose it is that you want them to fulfill. A simple trust example is a trust to provide for the caring of children, right? That there's a certain amount of money that, or even an investment account where you want to pull from the profits, right? That will be used to provide funding for the educational needs of your children.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Jenkins. I see her hand is up. One of the questions is from Ms. Pike. Mrs. Pike, how often should you review and update your will?
Definitely anytime there's a significant change in your life. For example, if you get married, you have children, or your spouse dies, passes away, or you obtain new real estate property, okay? So just like with our employers generally, if you miss open enrollment period, there are certain times where you can go back and ask to change your insurance benefits, okay? Outside of that, you want to definitely, in my humble opinion, just review your will every 5 years.
Okay. Ms. Jenkins, would you go ahead and ask your question? And Mr. Johnson, do you have another question?
No.
Okay, I'll lower you. Thank you. Ms. Jenkins?
Okay, I have two questions. One is about the trust, which I'll maybe ask that one first since that's what we're talking about. Okay, I have a trust and I have properties in there. And some accounts, like bank accounts, and some bank accounts I don't have in there. And I heard somewhere that if you don't have everything in there, that I guess, can the entire trust go into probate, or is it just the things maybe that aren't in the trust?
So are you talking about a trust or a will?
Well, in my trust, I have a will in there. I have I'm not sure if I did power of attorney in there or not. But I also have rental properties that are in the trust. And so, and then I have one rental property that's not in the trust. So would the one to say that's not in the trust, would that go into probate if I don't?
So here's the thing.
I don't even know how to ask the question.
Yeah, we might need an offshoot conversation. Okay. But I'll say this. Trusts are not subject to probate, okay? Wills could be subject to probate, all right? Trust and wills, different, okay? That's different. And all those details, I really don't like to answer specific or provide specific answers to general questions when I don't have all the specifics about that, because I don't want to make it wrong. We would have to look at your documents, right, to see what we're talking about there. If we're talking about items that have been listed in your will, if we're talking about items in your trust, if it was a, spillover trust, what's going on in there. But the good thing is you recognize you have questions, right? And you're thinking, okay, I need to go review this again just to make sure what's happening or what's said here is what I want to happen, and that all that I've prepared and worked for and written up and signed and maybe paid somebody to do is just not going to end up in smoke. Okay.
Right. Yeah. The other question had to do when you said about the second document about not necessarily putting how you want your services and everything right into your will. And I know somebody that did all of that, you know, what suit, the songs, all of it. So if you, which I never heard anybody doing that, but this second document that you're talking about, then how much weight does that second document carry since it's not in the will?
Yeah, it's not in the will because you don't want to so much tie the hands of your executor for things like that, right? But you do want to provide them with information and guidance on what needs to be, or what you would like to be done regarding your song, your outfit, your psalms, you know, whatever it is that you want to happen for your final services. It's guidance. It's information for informational purposes. And I would keep it together, right? I would keep
Oh,
it
with the will. Okay. Yeah.
But it's not the will. It's not binding.
Oh, okay. It's not binding. Okay.
No.
So
Because then
I'm sorry.
he had like, what time is supposed to start? Were you supposed to do what songs? Who's supposed to speak? When it needs to end? Each speaker can't speak longer than 2 minutes. I mean, just with the whole.
My in-laws did something similar, and I need to find. I don't think they made it as their will. No, they just made a document for us, and they told us where it is. You know, it's in their safe with everything else, so that we can just follow that. We don't even have to. You know, we're going to be sad enough. We don't even think about that. You know. Okay. I see another question here from Tawana Reed. I'm not going to be able to answer, so I'll just
Ms. Villarreal, okay, so you have 4 more minutes, and what I will say is you have 2 more questions that we'll ask. One of the questions that I had was, what do you need? When do you need a trust? When you need a trust? And are irrevocable trusts recommended in addition to the will? If so, what is the difference between a trust and an irrevocable trust?
Now, remember in the beginning, I said I'm only touching on trust, okay? So unfortunately, that was my touch on trust. When do you need a trust? Well, it depends on your individual circumstances. Not everybody necessarily needs a trust, okay? But everybody needs a will.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll take the last, Mrs. Skelton.
I wanted to just point out that the end of life planning or the funeral arrangements should be something that is included in like your advanced directives, so that your family will know what to happen in the event of the end of your life. Because your will, because you may not be the executor of your will, or the family might not be the executive of your will, they might not have access to your will and that information. So that could be an additional document that your family knows about of what you would want for your end of life celebration.
Exactly.
Awesome. This is a great segue into the contact information of Ms. Vanellous, Villarreal, Esquire. Information I have up here. And then we're going to go into Mrs. Skelton, who's going to talk about healthcare directors. Please understand, I do see some of your questions, and I might not have gotten all of them. I did see some about term life, and we have Miss Insurance Agency that's going to speak on that. So that's why I did not address it or called on you. But remember, we will have another time where you can ask some questions again of all the speakers. With that being said, I'm going to show the slide for a little bit longer. Here are the contact numbers to speak to Ms. Vanellous Villarreal, Esquire. She is a lawyer in Virginia who is familiar with this. So please, please, please reach out and contact her. And also understand this will not be the last time that Tau Delta Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated have an estate plan. We know that this is a touch in on things. This is something that is so big and so huge that we find ourselves having to touch a little bit, but we plan to try to do some more sessions like this. So be on the lookout. Check out our Facebook page and our Instagram, and we will be sharing some stuff. One other thing I have to say before I move into our healthcare directives is I want to let you know that we are having a competition. It was donated by Miss Insurance Agency. We're having domino gift cards for winners. So as you're listening, taking tune, we'll be asking some questions of you, or the speakers might ask a question to give you a gift card. So having said that, we're going to go into healthcare directives. Mrs. Coretta Skelton, you are up.
Hello, everyone. I am Coretta Skelton. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Maryland. I have experience with child welfare, foster care and adoptions, as well as hospice care and bereavement. I am a proud graduate of the Morgan State University and Barry University in Miami, Florida. I am licensed in the state of Maryland, and so I am only able to provide information regarding the state for which I am licensed. In other states, the information may be very similar. So I would encourage you to, once you get the information, you can go to like your state attorney's website and get the information that is comparable to what the information we will be sharing today. Next slide, please. Okay, so healthcare directives inner dialogue. So if you see, I would like for you to put in the chat where you fall in these. Which one resonates with you the most? Okay, a lot of fives. Okay, good. Okay, a 3, 4. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of, well, so I love what I do. And so what I do may not be fun for others, but is a passion of mine. And so I think, so that's why I said we're gonna have some fun. So give me a second. So just so we know about some statistics, 92% of people say that talking with their loved ones about end of life is important, but 32% have actually done so. 21% of people say that they haven't had conversations because they don't want to upset their loved ones. 53% have said that they would be relieved if the loved one started the conversation. 95% says that they're willing and want to talk about the end of life, their end of life wishes. 80% of people say that if serious illness, they would want to talk to their doctors about their wishes for medical treatment towards the end of life. 18% report having had this conversation with their doctor. That is huge. That's a big gap. 97% of people say that it's important to put their wishes in writing. 37% have actually done so. So let's keep that in mind as we move on. Next slide, please. So as we move through this section, I would like for us to have a few thoughts that we're mindful of as we go through. And the first one is by Candy Chang. Preparing for death is one of the most empowering things you can do. Thinking about death clarifies life. And I would offer, if you have a problem with people telling you what to do, then this is the best thing to do for yourself. And then Alua, author, who is what is called a death doula. So similar to what a birth doula is, she helps individuals understand the course of the end of life process and have tough conversations and also is there with individuals as they are moving towards end of life. She says, "What must I do to be at peace with myself so that I may live presently and die gracefully?" And I would also offer my thoughts is that death is a part of life. It is not an event. It is something that all of us will experience. Some of us suddenly, and some of us have time to plan for it. So those are the thoughts as we move forward. Please keep those things in mind. So as we start, we will have some terminology that we will go over. And so some of those are healthcare agent. That's the person that you determine who's going to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. Medical power of attorney. So I believe Ms. Jenkins said that she has like a package. She has she has a will, she has a trust, she has advanced directives. And so if individuals choose to utilize an attorney, there are certain things that come together in a package and you pay for it. And so a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, medical and financial are a part of that process. Now, with the medical power of attorney, that is only active when you say it's active. So in your document, you can say it's active as soon as I sign this document, or you can say it's active if two doctors and a licensed clinical social worker, or two doctors say that I have lacked capacity. Now, capacity can, I'll get to that. So, and it's only valid while you are alive. So once you have died, then your executor kicks in. And so that's where your will kicks in. So just keep those things in mind. Capacity. Capacity is the ability to understand issues, treatments, your benefits, risk, anything. So side effects of the consequences of your decisions. And capacity can come and go. So an individual may lack capacity while they are receiving anesthesia, or you may lack capacity while you are having childbirth, or while you are in the surgery. So if something changes while you're in the surgery, they may ask your power of attorney or your healthcare agent, what should we do moving forward? But then when you come out of surgery and you are oriented to your space, then you can continue to make decisions for yourself. Advanced directives. So advanced directives are just that. Decisions that you make for yourself in advance of when you need them. And so it's pretty much a reference of what you want in the event that you can't make decisions for yourself. So that might be if you have lost consciousness, if you have gone into a coma, if you have taken a medication that was not did not work well with your system, and so you're confused, or if you have a mental health illness and you have an episode that leaves you unable to make decisions for yourself. A living will. So a living will is what you want, and many people use advanced directives and living will interchangeably. And it's pretty much what you want as you receive medical care. Next slide, please.
Types of health directives.
Yes. So just so you know, like health directives, they let your family know medically and your medical providers know what you would want when you can't make decisions for yourself. Just wanted to make sure I touched on that. So types of health directives. So you have a medical directive that talks about who's your healthcare agent, health decisions, interventions, when to start, what type of things you want, and you can be as detailed as you desire. That's why it's advocated that you make these decisions ahead of time so that you're not going with the emotions of the experience that you are going through. And then the second one is mental health. So you can think about who is the best person to make this decision for you. A detail of your preferred medications, what works for you, what doesn't. Your mental health professionals, what if you were to have to go into a facility, which facility would you prefer? Sometimes when individuals have mental health challenges and like 911 is called, if the police are called, then you go for emergency and you go to the closest hospital. Your medical directive says what program you would prefer to go to, what hospital you would prefer to go to. Once you go to the emergency room, then your mental health advanced directives gives guidance regarding that. Who information can be disclosed to. There's mental health and medical health, all are under the scopes of HIPAA, which protects our medical, protects our information as it gets out. So it doesn't get out to just whoever calls in and asks for it. Next slide.
Before we go to the next slide, Mr. Skelton, can you answer two questions? One is, what's HIPAA? And another one is, if your parent loses cognitive ability before an advanced directive is done, what should the family do?
So the second question, we will get down to that in another slide. But the first one, HIPAA is Health Information Protective Act. And I'm forgetting like one more P. And so what that does is it protects your health information. So it protects your name, your illness, your treatment that you're receiving, and only the people who receive it, only the people who have access to it are the people that need it. So as a social worker in hospice, in my computer, I have access to my team, right? But according to HIPAA, I only am able to access the people who are on my caseload. And outside of that, then I would be violating HIPAA. So that is the kind of, so for you, if you were calling in about your spouse, or let's say you were calling in for your friend and your friend does not have you as a person to disclose to, then they would say, I will take your message and give it to, like, they would say, I cannot release that information to you. So they could, one, not even confirm that that person is there. They can't give you any information because you are not eligible for that information according to HIPAA.
Thank you. And thank you to Mr. Johnson, I think, and Ms. Robertson for putting it in, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. They've been putting it in the chat. Appreciate it. Another question. Oh, no, sorry, not that question, it's to me. Here is Healthcare Directives form. You want me to click on it?
You can actually, I put the links in your.
Okay, so I will send out a link now.
Yes. So the health directives for Maryland is on our state attorney's, is on our state attorney's website. You can either obtain an attorney to do estate planning, and they do packages with talking about your advanced directives, power of attorneys, what you would want in the event of your death, and whatever you choose to pay for. The advanced directives are not something that you have to have like notarized. You have to have them witnessed. And when you have them witnessed, they are not able to, the people who are witnessed cannot be the individuals who are named as healthcare agents in the document. So if you are a parent, and if you are a parent and you're saying that if you're a parent and you're saying that my son and my daughter will be my healthcare agents, then you have to get someone else to sign that document saying that these people, that you were of your right, or saying that you made a cognizant decision. In the advanced directives, there are 3 questions that you ask. It wants to know whether or not what you would like if you were in a vegetative state, what you would like if you have been diagnosed with a terminal illness or life-limiting illness, and then what you would want if you were diagnosed with end-stage terminal illness or a life-limiting illness. So the difference between the last 2 is that you can have a terminal illness or a life-limiting illness and not be at end stage. End stage is when all resources or medical intervention have been exhausted, or if you determine that you no longer want to seek treatment. And in that time, then you may govern yourself, or you would like for your healthcare agent to govern themselves regarding your treatment differently. And so, if you look at that document, all of the answers to the question are the same. However, the circumstances are different. Sometimes people are confused by that.
The document is inside the chat.
Also in that document, it says, what should your healthcare agent consider? So sometimes we don't necessarily say these things. And so I would like to ask you a question of, if you were diagnosed with a serious cancer, what would you want your doctors to know? A, lay it all on the line, and you can put this in the chat. B, just focus on the next steps and not overwhelm me. Or C, talk realistically to my loved ones, but stay optimistic with me.
So the first person to answer was C, Meredith Bruce. She said C. Ashley Robertson came up behind and said 1, which I believe is A. Javon Jones said A. So which one? La Antoinella said C. Michelin Myers said B. Tawana Reed said C. Kiara Vincent said B. Whichever one you said is the first answer will be the first winner.
Right. And so there's no right or wrong answer. Okay. This is about what you would want for yourself. And so those would be the things that you would put in your advanced directives, or in your things that your healthcare person should know about what you either value, what you find most important, what your quality, tell people what your quality of life would be. So if you are able to sustain treatment, or you're doing treatment, but you're not able to have a good quality of life, and whatever you say your quality of life is, then your healthcare agent would know, okay, so maybe maybe this would trigger for your healthcare agent. Maybe I should talk to Coretta about, is this really what her quality of life is? Because your healthcare agent is also kind of your, reminding you of what you said you wanted. And even if like they can also help you understand, like, okay, you might be stepping outside of what you said your quality of life is. Is that where we're going? Or are we going to stick to the program? And you can say, no, I'm going to try this one more time. So, yeah.
I have a question from you. I see her hand is up, Ms. Vincent, and she asked, isn't this the same document, Advanced Medical Directive, hospitals offer patients when one visits the emergency room?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And that's why, and it's so, it's available where, so sometimes people, there's a range of you doing your document. So some people would like to invest the money for individuals to do it for you and walk you through the process. And then other people may not either want to spend the money, or they might not have the resources to do so. These are available for you to do it, and it's still seen in the same light.
Okay. So moving to your, and I see hands, and I will, when it's time for the question section, I will, occasionally I'll jump in, and then some I'll call on you. Who needs health directives?
Sorry.
It's okay. And I do see a hand.
Okay, so the, and so the second one, I'm sorry, because we're still on the, so the second one is the Advanced Directive for Mental Health.
Oh, sorry.
And so in that, if you look through it, it gives you similar information, but it also tells, like the person says who they are, and then they go through of the usual symptoms of their mental health disorder, of their mental disorder, medications that work best for them, medications that they've had a negative reaction to and what that reaction looks like. So these are, and we don't talk about this much. And because we as a society, I think, don't highlight mental health and the challenges that individuals impart. And sometimes when people come into the emergency room, it may be because they had a bad reaction to medication, or because they're not receiving their medication. And so having these in place, there's a lot of people who have mental health challenges or concerns that result in either hospitalizations, and they don't have this information. So this is good for us to look at and be mindful of as we are planning for ourselves and the people that we care for.
Ready for the next one?
And then the third document, it's called a MOST. It is the Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. This, in these forms, is the only document that your doctor signs. This form is completed when you have a medical illness that you're currently addressing. So some of us may have experienced this if we've gone into the hospital for a surgery, if we've had children, if we have been diagnosed with like a heart condition or cancer. This document is something that your doctor may say, like, on the fly while you're in the hospital, not when you're in their office, but they'll say it on the fly and then you complete it. The thing about this document is it should go with what your advanced directives say. And so you being mindful of that. And so all the people who have a part in your healthcare, should know. So like your doctor should know, your different specialists, your healthcare agent should know, your doctors and everything, and they should have their access information so that everyone is on the same board and on the same page, and it is better apt for your healthcare agent to advocate on your behalf. So just keeping that in mind. Let me get back to the screen. Okay. Next page.
Who needs health directives?
So in the state, in the DMV, it's anyone who is 18 years and older. So if you are 18 years old, you should have healthcare directives or older. If you're planning a surgery, if you're planning to give birth, if you have a mental health illness that impacts judgment from time to time, and then if you have a life-limiting illness, pretty much everybody should have, everyone that's over the age of 18 should have health directives, so that if you were in a car accident, if you had an aneurysm, if you have a heart attack, if you have been diagnosed with, cancer, ALS, congestive heart failure, those things, Alzheimer's, you should have an advanced directive, so that the people who are helping you know what you want while you're able to make that decision. And to remove some of the emotion from it, so everybody is clear-headed. Next slide. And we've talked about this. So who carries out advanced directives? Your healthcare agent. So the person that you've decided is trustworthy, willing, and able to carry out what you say. Back in the advanced directives in the state of Maryland, it says, do you want for this person to carry it out, to carry out to the letter of the law? Pretty much everything I say, you do it. Don't defer from it. And then it says that person can have some leadway according to what is presented to them. So you have the right, and that's why it's important to do this while you're clear-headed, while you're able to make these decisions, so that you can say, if this, then that. If not, then this. And you can put it specifically. So this is the advanced directives is kind of like your just an open, it's your template. And then you can put in the details of your template, what you value, what you want. Don't have this person come into the hospital while I'm in, ever. Don't let this, don't take pictures of me when I am on my deathbed. So those type of things, you can put that directly in your living will, what you want. You can put what you want to do with your body. Growing up, I had my godmother talked about how she says if people want to spend time with her, they need, or wants to see about her, they need to see about her before she dies. Because when she closes her eyes, you will never see her again, because she will be donated to science. And so we just know that when we get the call, we know that whenever was the last time we saw her was the last time we saw her. And so I think that we have to be more mindful about getting those details in there so that your wishes can be carried out. Because if her children didn't know that she wants to be donated to science and she's already done the groundwork, then they can just say, oh, I'm going to call the funeral home down the street and we're going to have a funeral. And she don't want her money to go to no funeral home. So that's the kind of thing that you want to put in your living will and the advanced directives. Whether or not you want to be cremated or buried, whether or not you want a funeral, or if you want to celebrate, if you don't want a funeral, you want a party, let people know. Say in your living will, I've written a letter detailing this is it, this is where you find it. And then you can, so that people know what you want. I've had people say, oh, I just want a huge game night. I don't want a funeral, a huge game night. I know what I want. I don't want a funeral. I want to have pictures of me throughout my life around wherever it's going to be. If I'm in Maryland, I want it out in a park, and I want pictures around my life, and you can go around to the pictures, you can talk about the stories, and then I would like for you to put my ashes underneath a magnolia tree. That's how I would like. And I would like to have my ceremony to be a triumphant soror. So that's what, and then for that, so in TDZ, we have like what, if we want to have our ritual done. When you do that, so people, if you're in like your respective organizations, put that in your advanced directives, and so that your family knows, and that your organization isn't like hounding your family to make a decision for something, and then it looks like we just want to be showy. No, we know that this person really valued that, and we wanted to make sure that it's there. But when the family is going through what they're going through, which we may never be privy to all the dynamics of it, it may add more stress than it is helpful. And so as we do our advanced care planning, put that information in there. I would like to have my organization's end of life ritual so that everyone is clear, and also talk to people and let them know. So getting back onto the page, the people who do this are your healthcare power of attorney. So that would be in that legal document, that is what it is, a guardian. So sometimes people don't have family that either they trust to follow through, or that they trust to follow through, or they don't have anyone who's able to do it. So sometimes individuals who have outlived their families, they have a guardian that was appointed by the court, or they have an individual who has petitioned to be their guardian by the court. A surrogate is someone that I just said, Tawana, I want Tawana to be my surrogate. Before I went under, I said, I want Tawana to be my surrogate. So everyone from that time will deem that Tawana is my surrogate, and so she will make the decisions for me. And then a legal guardian for a minor.
So
yes.
Before you go to the next, I don't know if you were ready to take some questions.
I can.
Okay, so first question. You mentioned living will, which is a term we hear often. Is that the same as an advanced directive? Does advanced directive equal living will?
Yes, it does. So many people use it interchangeably. And when generally you might see it in your estate planning packets. They will call it a living will, and then they'll add the advanced directives within the living will.
Okay. So unlike wills, which we can choose to let them know, we should let our family know our advanced directives. Is that correct?
Yes, you should. And also, your healthcare agent does not have to be a family member. Your power of attorney doesn't have to be a family member. It's whomever you feel most confident will carry out your wishes.
And your last question before we move to the next slide, and please remember, you can ask questions in the chat room as well as raise your hand, especially the raise their hands will be at the end of her session. But this is the last one for the chat room. I'm hearing that we can put our final wishes, end of life rituals, etc., in an advanced directive, correct? Does this need a witness?
No, it does not need a witness. So you can say, there's a part at the end where it's like, where it talks about what you would want, what to do with my body. And you can put like, if you want a funeral, who to contact, like if you want them to contact a pastor or things of that nature, on that document that we put in the chat, that would be there. But you could also have a conversation with your family and say, this is what I want. And you can write it down, date it, and say, this is, or in your advanced directive, you can say, I have left a letter. It is this place. read it, and this is what I would want for my end of life arrangements.
What happens without healthcare agent? Without a healthcare agent.
So without a healthcare agent, our government steps in. And so that's where the laws are. So the Maryland Healthcare Decision Act says if there's no advanced directives, these are the people who will make decisions for you, and this is how it will go. So a guardian appointed by the court, your spouse or
Domestic.
No. Your spouse or your domestic partner, but it has to be documented that they are your spouse. So otherwise you would have to have a document saying that my domestic partner makes decisions for herself. So I'm sorry, that is an error. Your spouse, or if your state recognizes your partner, then they would be the person who will make decisions for you according to the state law. After that, your adult children, then your parents. So if you don't have adult children, then your parents would make the decision for you. If your parents aren't alive, then your siblings would make decisions for you. And then a friend or person that's a relative, but then they would have to get guardianship. So then the laws just step in. Now, a note about the adult children and the adult siblings: if you have multiples and you don't have something in writing, all of your children make the joint decisions according to what is needed for you. So it's not just, the oldest will make the decision. No, it's all of them that will make a decision. And same with the siblings. It's not just the one that you like the most or that you talk to all the time. It's all of them. And so sometimes, like as a social worker, I have to call all of these people and say, let's have a team meeting. Let's have a family meeting. And either if people wish to bow out and say, no, Tawana has been doing everything. We trust her decisions. We want for her to be the decision maker. Then all I have to do is make a note that the family who are, according to the Decision Act, able to do it, have relinquished to this person. But that's a whole lot of stuff going on when a decision could be made or a person could be identified previous to. A lot of factors go into why a decision maker has not been identified. One, we're caught unawares. Two, we didn't think it would happen to us. And then we're just not prepared. Or the person that we only had one healthcare agent, didn't have a backup, and that person's no longer alive.
What about their age? Can their age, a couple of questions in here about, does that include stepchildren, as well as making donation decisions for me? And can an age 14 be considered an adult for a child? Or what if your parents are not mentally able to make the decision and you have no adult siblings behind you? So yes, so all of that goes along with what we were talking about before of an adult can make the decision. So a child that's 14, a person that's 14 or a child that's 14 cannot make that decision. A person that is 18, so if you have a child that is 18, they could make the decision, but a child that is one of your children that is 14 cannot. I was thinking, like, my parents have always been open about what they would want. My mom, since I can remember, have always said, don't put me on any machines.
I don't ever want it. And then my dad has said, when I die, I want to be cremated. Don't spend no money on me. Send me back to Jamaica. That's all they've said. I know it. And it works because both of them value my conversation. But when I was younger and in my input, when I was younger, if both of them weren't available, somebody else would be making those decisions. And they might not have asked me, do you know what your parents would have wanted? They didn't have anything in place or in writing of what they would want. My mom just got hers in 2014, and my dad, he's working on his. He has a healthcare directive, but he doesn't have his estate planning.
So
And he got his advanced directives when he had to have a heart surgery. So
you're
it's
saying that it's very important for people who have children that's under the age of 18 to put these things in writing.
Yes.
Including stepchildren.
Yes. So some families don't have the titles of stepchildren. So if that's your family's understanding, then yes, if you have selected this person to be to be your healthcare agent, then that's the person. But if they are some people, and you know how your family is, but it's actually like, who are the person's children, their biological children, and they will have that conversation. Now, someone in that family may disclose or say, like, this is considered a family member. They've been in our family for, like, she's been my stepmother for X, Y, and Z. Then they're in that. But if they're not biologically, then according to the state, they're not a part of that. But somebody in that group may make an issue of it and bring them in, and that's okay. Because we operate in hospice, we operate of whomever the patient considers family. Right. Next slide. So how do they work? So advanced directives impact what is in your medical orders for life-sustaining treatment. So advanced directives and living will is, if this happens, then do this. And so the medical orders for life-sustaining treatment is an order that is initiated by the doctor after they consider or have a discussion with you about what your wishes are. And those two documents should mirror one another. The most form, if you had a time to look at it, on the first page, it talks about whether or not it's the state of Maryland's DNR, D&I, so do not resuscitate, do not intubate form. We hear about that a lot on TV. It's just do not resuscitate, right? Well, that form says what you want. And sometimes if you're in the hospital, they kind of just come in and say, do you want to be resuscitated or not? And you answer the question, right? Or you're like, wait, why are you asking me that? They ask it for everyone. However, depending on where you are in your body and how you're feeling about your body, you don't want to answer that question at all. But that also impacts on what happens in the event that you are no longer able to, in case that your capacity changes. And if your capacity changes, then they're going to go with what you already told them. No, yeah, save my life, or do all the measures. But all the measures might be things that you weren't interested in having. So having the advanced directives, having a healthcare agent, then allows for there to be open communication about your well-being for your healthcare needs and with the medical order of life-sustaining treatment. Next slide. So why healthcare directives are important. To my left is Bobby Christina Brown. She had a sudden event, which was a drug overdose, and she was in a coma for 6 months. Bobby Christina was over 18 years old. She has a living, she had a father who was living, but they had to go to court to get a decision maker because the grandmother contested. And so if Bobby Christina had either guidance or awareness to make healthcare decision acts or healthcare decisions for herself, then she could say what if she would want, if she was in a vegetative state, if it was medically advised, or if it was if there was a chance, this is what I would want. But she did not have that information. Well, she did not, the documents weren't available, the things weren't in place to do that. So the world saw and experienced the challenges that the family went through, and how the community, our community, kind of grieved with the family of this loss, or of these of how the family kind of had to process of making the decisions for this young lady. And then John Singleton, he experienced a severe stroke and was in a coma for over a week, while his family decided in court who would be the person to be his decision maker. Now, these two individuals were what we would seem as people of means. So individuals who could have done estate planning and included this in their power of attorney, things of that nature. So it's not respective of having these documents is not respective of whether or not you have means or not. It's about what we're educated and what we're aware of and what we kind of put our energy towards. Doing the work helps us all, helps everyone involved. It makes a very difficult experience and situation or time of life easier, because we don't know what is hard until it's hard, right? And so the experience of loss is hard. But then adding on not knowing and adding on all like decision fatigue, it can make an even more worse challenge in experiencing the loss and grieving and mourning for the person that you care for. Next slide. I apologize for the spelling corrections. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like having conversations with family and friends about like medical, psychiatric, quality of life, whether or not you want for like what happens at the end of life. Do you want for people to post on social media that you've died? Like, do you want be like RIP? Or do you just want for like people to know about word of mouth? Do you like, what do you value? Those type of things. Some people call it a death plan. Some people call, like, when you talk about quality of life wishes, some people call it a death plan. Some people call just what you value. That's important. Identifying who is able, who is best fit for the task at hand, and who is willing to be your healthcare agent or power of attorney. It does not matter if they're the oldest. It does not matter if they are your only child. It does not matter if they are your only sibling or if they are your parents. It matters if they are capable, if they are able to handle the task, if they're willing, because sometimes people get this and they're not interested in carrying it out. They're not interested in what they might deem as stressful or the back and forth. So it's really, and that's why it's really important to do these things ahead of time so that you can look at that person in all facets and say if they would be able to deal with what's needed. Complete the documents and have the necessary signatures, provide copies to all interested parties, your medical, mental health providers, revisit the conversation. What you knew when you were 18 and what you know now is totally different. What your experiences will impact how you change and like what may have happened in the community or in society. And you're like, yeah, I'm not interested in having that experience. And so then you update it and you let your healthcare agent know this is how it's changed. This is what I would want in the future. And so those type of things to be mindful of. Carry your wishes with you. So a lot of times, and I will say for myself, a lot of my experience with loss have been sudden. So no one knew, or like someone might have had cancer, but then they had a stroke and things changed very swiftly, right? So carrying your wishes, maybe like if you have a life-limiting illness, carrying it in your wallet, in your phone, maybe having a medical assistant bracelet, so that if something happens to you while you're in the community, someone's not doing something that is against your wishes. So if you have a heart condition and you have a heart attack or your heart fails while you are out shopping and you don't want to be resuscitated, then someone's coming up to you to either give you chest compression, CPR, or they call 911 and they defibrillate you. If you have either a medical alert bracelet or if you have a necklace and it says DNR, then they know what not to do to honor your wishes. So just keeping that in mind. In our cell phones, there are health ID kind of information in there. So you could update that information, who your contacts are. So just, take some time to look at those things. My one last question. Sorry, I had it. How often do you let your loved ones know how you feel? A, very rarely. I'm not one to share my feelings. B, fairly often, in the right moments and at the right time. C, constantly, and they ask me to stop. Okay. Okay. And one last one for you to think about. My perfect last day on earth would be spent doing what, with, or without whom? And you think about that. And then as you do your advanced directives, include that. So people know what you want, what you don't want. And it also helps you empower yourself when you feel like everything else is outside of your control. If you have been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness or have had a sudden change in your health. Thank you for your time.
What a great session. Thank you, Mrs. Skelton. So I have some questions for you. Let me go back to the chat room. And if you have a hand, raise your hand and I will call on you. But while I do that, I will read some of the questions that came. So Ms. Morgan asked, when they ask you in the hospital, does that override what you have in your directives? In other words, is it the latest information that they go on?
It goes on the information they have available. So if the person who's making the decision is able to make the decision, and they're not, and their capacity isn't in question, you go with what that person says. Now, if that person, when someone else shows up and the capacity is not there, then the healthcare agent shows up with documents, then you make that decision. Then that person makes that decision.
Okay. Next, Ms. Jenkins asks, if someone has already told the hospital that they wanted, why do they still ask the POA what they want?
It's if something changes. So there may be like a change in medication that has to happen. So in the MOLS form, there's 2 pages. There's the front and the back. The first one is what the EMTs will address. Or if you're in the hospital and you have what they call a code blue, that's what they'll address. The second page is if you're in the hospital for any other reason other than a cardiac event. So it goes over whether or not you want to be intubated, whether you want blood transfusions, things of that nature. If you don't have that completed, then they're going to ask your healthcare agent what to do if you are lacking capacity or if you're not able to make a decision for yourself.
Okay. Another question which was asked by Ms. Hunt Brown, can you have more than one POA if they are not able to handle the task?
Yes, you can put like a primary, secondary. You can say that these 2 people should make the decision jointly. You can say that if this person is not available, then this person is there. Or if that person's not there, then then a third person is in play. So you can, it's your world. Do with it what you wish. So when you're doing advanced directives and you have all the time in the world to do these things, you can like think about, okay, so if I know that this person has X, Y, and Z on their plate, so maybe she will need, or maybe that person will need additional help. Talk with those people, see if they're going to be able to work together. Sometimes for people who have like the packages of durable power of attorneys, and so durable power of attorney is when you cover both financial and medical. Some people say, well, I'm going to give Coretta the medical, and I'm going to give Tawana the financial, because I know that Tawana is better with finances than Coretta is, or whatever, right? So those 2 people have to work together, especially when you get to, like, if that person is moving towards end of life and they're taking care of at home and things of that nature. Those 2 are going to have to talk to one another, because as the medical person, I'm saying, oh, things are changing. They're going to need resources in their home. I'm going to have to be able to talk to that person. I can't be in conflict with that person because I don't want to answer her phone calls. I don't want to do this, and that. And in essence, I'm being like left because y'all can't talk. And I need somebody in the house to take care of me. So you have to think of those things and making sure that everybody is aware of who their partners in your care are, so that things can run as you wish. Okay. And you can also put caveats. If they can't work together, talk to this person. Something, okay.
So here's another one. Mr. Johnson asked, Michael Johnson, I'm sorry. Can you recap the difference between a healthcare agent and a healthcare POA?
So they are in essence the same. However, they are in 2 different documents. So the healthcare agent is in your advanced directives that you may sign through the state of Maryland and have the two witnesses that aren't named in the document. Healthcare power of attorney is in your legal document, because a power of attorney is a legal document that had either attorney or it's notarized, that these people can make these decisions or do these things on your behalf.
Okay, Miss Lane, not me. My mom is actually in the room listening,
Hello.
participating. And so her question is, she has a question. If a family member dies and the two that's left behind is an oldest child and a daughter-in-law, who gets to take the directive? Do that needs to be in writing, or rather, no, if they didn't put it in writing, who gets the power of attorney? Who makes the decision then?
Who would be the surrogate? So the surrogate would be, according to the Maryland Healthcare Decisions Act, it would be the child, the adult child. The daughter-in-law is not considered in that equation.
What about if the person who's dealing with it put their granddaughter in charge, but the granddaughter in charge? And
so if that person let that be known prior to capacity changing, then the entity utilizes that as it. But if let's say that the individual had capacity in the hospital and they said, talk to my granddaughter, then during the time that that person is in the hospital, I'm talking to the granddaughter. Now, if they leave the hospital and they go back home, they enroll in hospice, the granddaughter isn't that person unless that person still has capacity, doesn't have a document, but says, this is the person I want you to talk to about my services. Oh. And so then you have a surrogate. Okay. But if you have if everyone knows that and everyone's okay with it, then that's what you go with. But if someone has a problem with it, then you go what legally it is stating. If the person no longer has capacity. If the person has capacity, she could tell you, I don't care what they say. She's the person who makes the decisions for me.
Okay. So thank you for that one.
You're welcome.
Another question. If you only trust your children to make decisions, but and this is from Miss Bruce, but they are under 18, what do you do?
I would consult an attorney and find out what you would do, because according to the letter of the law, they would not be able to do that.
And then we have one more question. And for those who are looking in the chat with me, Ms. Galloway, can you check to see if anybody raised their hand for me, please? I hear the importance of having these documents, but I'm thinking, how helpful are they at home when you're in the hospital? So where should these be kept? Phone, accessible?
So these documents should be, so the people who are in the document should know where they are. If you are, I think that you should carry them in your glove compartment. If you like, so in mine, I have like a little wallet that has my insurance information, like my car insurance information, my registration, and then a fold of like advanced directives in there. So if I get in a car accident, then like you might be looking for my information in my glove compartment, and there you go. But also putting it on your phone, because they would look for your emergency person, things of that nature. I don't necessarily, so personally, if I'm in a car accident, there's a whole lot of factors can happen. So I'm not opposed to receiving CPR while I'm in the field or in the community. Now, when I get home, when I get to the hospital and they say certain things have changed, I do have an opinion about how long or the equation of why I'm still receiving life-sustaining treatment.
Okay. And then, okay, this question from Harriet Lane. When you die, if you have bills, How should you handle that so your family would know how to move forward? I don't want them paying my bills.
When you die,
So let's say they have credit card bills, or like for me, I have a student loan, but my mom is referring to having any credit card bills, any outstanding loans, any debt that might maybe cable, anything that's left behind when she passes on. She doesn't want me to be the one responsible for those bills.
so that would be the responsibility of your executor. So when you die, your advanced directives or your power of attorney, so your medical power of attorney, your all the power of attorneys, that dissolves their obligation when you die. Now, I was talking to my husband recently about that. When people have wills, sometimes we, as a community, in as society, we may have like the person who is your power of attorney also be your executor, right? So then they can do those things. And we also have like X, Y, and Z is on my bank account. So then they can pay your bills accordingly because they're joint owner of your bank account. It just depends on how you have set up your life. But if you have an executor, then your executor is responsible for paying, making sure that your estate finals up your debt or whatever it is, according to whatever the law says. So when they get death certificates, when people receive death certificates, some things might be absolved. Other things you might have to pay if there's an estate. If there's not an estate, then there might be other things, but that is where, and that is why it's important to have those documents after the end of life in place so that those things can be taken care of.
Okay. So that seems to be all of the questions. You have a couple of kudos and thank you. And this is informative. So that seems to be all the questions that we have here. Now what we'll do is we'll transition. Thank you, Ms. Skelton. We're going to transition to Ms. Morgan, Mrs. Morgan, who is the Ms. Insurance agent. But before we do that, I want to do a little switch. Ms. Graves, if you're still on, I'm looking to see if you're on, Renee Graves. You asked a question that deals with long-term life. Would you mind, I'm going to unmute you. And if you can please ask your question because it dealt with long-term insurance and I would like for Ms. Morgan to have that question on hand.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
So my question is, if you're married and let's say one of you have long-term insurance and the other one doesn't, and because of health reasons, it'll be very expensive to get insurance for that person, should you put your home in trust as you get older? So that you won't have to, let's say, you know, the woman has the health insurance and she dies first and the husband has to go in long-term care, then you have to use up all your assets in long-term care, if I'm not correct, before Medicare will pay long-term bills. So that's why I was wondering if you put it in trust early on or in the name of your children, is that useful?
Because that actually is more of a trust question than an insurance question. I would defer to Lontanella. However, I think that that's probably a good idea. I mean, that's part of kind of what trusts are about and for, is to protect your assets. It's a means by way you can protect your assets. And there are some others insurance wise. There actually might be a way for you to have a joint type of insurance that would still give the spouse who is not in good health access to long-term care. So I'd be happy to talk with you about that offline. But outside of that, or outside of using that, a trust might be a smart move. But that's, again, I don't do trusts, so Lantonello should probably chime in.
So we'll have Miss Lantonella, Mrs. chime in at the end. But I didn't know when I was reading it which one would fall between, which would be best. So that's why I wanted to start with it. So thank you, Miss Grace, for answering it. And I'm about to turn it over to Miss Insurance Agency. And I just want to remind the guests on this group, please remember to use the chat room. Please remember to use your hand. You can raise your hand if need be. We are, as you can see, monitoring the chat. And we also, at the end, will be raffling off based on those who've been asking questions and engaged. We will be raffling off some prizes. Okay, so now I am going to turn it over to Ms. Insurance Agency, Mrs. Tanoa Morgan. You're up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lane. And thank you everyone who is here. This has been an incredible and an engaging conversation. I'm going to say everybody give a muted round of applause to all of our speakers. They've been wonderful. I've learned a lot. And so I hope everybody else has as well. I also think it's time to take a little bit of a stretch break. We've been here on screen here for a while. So, if you feel like you've been sitting for too long, take a second, stand up, stretch a little bit, before we get down to business. I just, go ahead and take some time to stretch and get your body in the right frame of mind. Grab some water too. Yeah, I wish I'd grabbed some water too before I got on. But I wanted to first thank Tau Delta Zeta for asking me to participate in this seminar. I think all of us know that being able to take care of, to plan for our future is a really important thing. I think we all recognize how important it is to have these conversations. And, for those of you who might have, been a little convicted and said, you know what, I haven't had this conversation with my spouse or my kids about what I would like. I hope that you will be able to take some action here today after this conference and be able to do some of that. One of the reasons why I feel like it's really important for us to have these conversations is not only because of the impact of what it has on our families, but it's also the impact that it has on our communities. I'm going to talk about life insurance today, and most of us think about life insurance in terms of, I think just kind of like possibly an optional thing or just money that we need to have just enough for us to be buried or whatever it is. But I want to encourage you all to think about it in a slightly different way, because really all of the conversations that we've been having here today are, yes, partly about choices and decisions you want to make in your life or what you want your life to be or what you want to leave behind. But also, we're really talking about financial tools here. Wills and trusts, life insurance policies, these are all financial tools, right? They're ways that we have an opportunity to manage our money so that we can have a financial impact on our beneficiaries, on our loved ones, on our next generation. That's what this is really about. And when we think about our own personal families, and for some of us, we might have a good stories to tell, and others of us, we might have tragic stories to tell about the ways in which our family members managed or failed to manage, their monies. But we collectively as a community, we have an opportunity by gaining the knowledge and utilizing these tactics that we're learning today. We have an opportunity to have an impact on our community, on our greater community, and on our future generation. So I hope that we'll all be able to do that a little bit today. So let's go ahead and get started with this presentation. Who am I? My name is Tanoa Morgan. I'm the owner and founder of the Miss Insurance Agency that is based in Lanham, Maryland. So our agency specializes in life insurance and retirement. That is really where we try to hang our hat, because those are the bigger financial tools and the ways in which we feel like we can help families to create a firm foundation. But in addition to life insurance and retirement, we also provide homeowners insurance, renters, auto insurance, and business insurance. And that even includes commercial auto. So we do have a wide range of services that we provide through the agency. And, you know, if you find yourself in need of any services or have any questions about what you have already, we're always ready to help. So also, if you're an employer, we help businesses with group life insurance plans and group retirement plans for your employees, okay? So we love helping families to protect their finances, to build a firm financial foundation. You'll see us on Facebook or on social media using the hashtag Protected Life, because that's what we believe that everything we do is about. It's about making sure that our lives are protected. You'll be able to find us on social media at Miss Insurance MD. The MD stands for Maryland, not doctor. I'm not a doctor. Our website also is at msagencies.com, and our phone number is here, listed here, 240-544-6800. In the corner of this slide and of every slide, I have right here what I'm going to call the Amen button. Say it with me, the Amen button. So this is a QR code. Those of you who may be familiar with it, you can open up your phone, open up your camera app, and hover over the Amen button. If you have questions, if you want to schedule a time to sit down with me, a quick little 10 or 20-minute chat, just use the Amen button. You can go right in there, put your name and your email address in, and pick a time that would be good for you and I to talk. So anytime you have questions, and I mean, obviously we're taking questions here, but I mean, if you want to be able to chat with me offline, that is the quick, fast, and easy way that you'll be able to get to me. It's going to be on every slide, so you have every opportunity while we're going through this presentation. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Okay. So what is Miss Insurance? Miss Insurance Agency is an independent insurance broker. What does that mean? That means that I am not beholden to one company in particular. I work with dozens of insurance companies. I compare rates and I compare coverages. I match with companies that will fit your needs the best. Everybody's situation is different. So I match with what fits your needs. Basically, the most important thing to know about an independent insurance broker like myself is that my job is to do my homework. My job is to listen to you, find out what your needs really are, and then go back and do my homework and find what is the best fit for you based on the different companies and what they have to offer. So that's what it is. That's what Miss Insurance Agency is. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about life insurance, retirement, or even your auto insurance. We still work with dozens of companies. We still compare rates. We still do the homework to find the fit that's best for you. Next slide. Is there a next slide? Okay. So don't click anything else. Most people know that there are two types of life insurance. So I'm going to see if you guys are still awake. Put in your comments, what are the two types of life insurance? What types have you heard about? What have you heard? Term and perm, whole, who else? Do you have some others? Okay, whole and universal, I've heard of that too, okay. Term, great. Term and whole life, term and whole life, term and whole life. Term and whole universal, okay. All right, okay, so click please. So obviously we have term. And the preferred, the second type, everybody knows about term. Everybody's heard about the term. Click again. The second type of life insurance is what we would call permanent life insurance. Why not whole? Why not universal? Well, the reason is because there are actually several different types of permanent life insurance. Whole life is one type. Universal life is one type. So there are several different flavors, if you will, that permanent life insurance comes in. And we'll talk about that and what the flavors are and kind of how they compare a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, So let's move on. We're going to talk about the two types of life insurance now. So term, you're starting with term. What is term life insurance? Term life insurance, I'm going to equate it to renting an apartment, right? It is life insurance for sure, but it's life insurance that lasts for a specific term or period of time. Typically, you will buy term and life insurance in terms of 10, 15, 20, or 30 years, okay? So it is a type of life insurance that only provides benefits during its term, right? So if you were renting an apartment and your lease was up on March the 31st, come April the 1st, you don't owe anything to the landlord and the landlord doesn't owe anything to you. And also, you should have moved out of that apartment by April 1st, correct? Correct. So that's what term is like. If you had a term policy, you bought it and paid for it for 20 years. If you die year 20 and day 1, the landlord doesn't owe anything to you and you don't owe anything to the landlord. It will not pay out. This is not a policy that's going to pay beyond the term. Yes, you have paid for it for 20 years, but if you die 20 years in 1 day, 20 years in 1 month, or 21 years after that policy has completed, that policy is not going to pay out for you. Now, that sounds like it might be a bad thing, but it's really not, because term definitely has some benefits. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so what are the benefits? One of the first benefits of term life insurance is that it's inexpensive. It is considerably less than the permanent counterpart, okay? And there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that when we talk about permanent insurance. The other benefit to term life insurance is that it's level. The benefits of your term policy are never going to decrease. The price of your term policy is never going to increase. So if you were 20 years old and you were able to get a term policy for, $15 a month, however long that term is, you'll pay $15 a month for the entirety of that term. Your rates are not going to increase on you, and your benefits are not going to decrease. It's also reliable, right? Your family can get a lot of coverage very affordably. So that's really one of the benefits and the beauty of term insurance. So living benefits, when you add living benefits to a term policy, that can add even more bang for your buck. What are living benefits? Again, that's something we'll get to a little bit later in this presentation, but term definitely has its benefits. So let's move on to the second, or rather to the second type of insurance, permanent insurance. Okay, so permanent. If term insurance is like renting an apartment, then permanent insurance is like purchasing a house, right? It costs a little bit more, but it also has more benefits attached to it. So cash accumulation is one of the key things about permanent insurance. When you're buying a permanent plan, those policies always have cash accumulation attached to it, which means that the policy, the life insurance policy, is building a cash value over time. And that cash value is beneficial in that you can borrow against it, take it out, and use that money for any reason at all. And in many cases, you will be able to take that money out tax-free. So definitely, there's benefits there. So the other thing is that it's designed to provide a lifetime benefit, okay? So no matter how old you are, you can keep level payments with permanent insurance. It's designed to provide a lifetime benefit. So if you have a child and you buy a permanent policy for that child at 6 months old or 2 months old or 5 years old, and let's say you're paying $20 or $30 a month, when that child is 85 years old, guess what they can be paying for that life insurance policy to still have the same amount of coverage that they had from the time that they were 2? $20 or $30 a month. It's a beautiful thing. You're supposed to have a permanent policy all your life. That's why it's called permanent. And in fact, the first type of permanent policy that was developed was called whole life, and that was the reason for why it was called that. Because why? You're supposed to have it your whole life. It's a type of insurance you can have your whole life. Okay. So payment flexibility. That's another thing that's a benefit to permanent policy. Everybody knows that life has its ups and downs, and we might be gainfully employed and having, making great money today, and tomorrow, our job could be in jeopardy, or maybe we've lost it. And so we all know that, especially when it comes to our finances, it has ebbs and flows. It has ups and downs. Sometimes things are tight. And so with many of the permanent policies, they provide payment flexibility. So if you needed to make your payments a little bit smaller for a period of time because your spouse has lost, a job, or maybe you've lost a job, you're able to do that. If you need to be able to not pay for a period of time, but know that you still have that coverage in place, you have the flexibility to do that. Of course, this all depends on how long you've had the policy, but the flexibility is built into the policy. So that's one of the other beautiful things about permanent insurance. Now, one thing I will tell you about permanent insurance, and I think I mentioned a little bit, permanent insurance costs a little bit more, and the reason is for the cost is because of the cash accumulation. So every time that you're paying into that permanent policy, part of your money is going to pay for the true cost of insurance, and part of your money is going to the cash accumulation portion of your insurance. And so that cash is accumulating year after year, month after month. And then you also are credited by the insurance company with some dividends or returns. You're credited, it can be anywhere from 3% up to, 20%. You can be credited each year based on the amount of money that you have. They'll give you credits and basically, increasing your money. It's like an investment. So that pretty much gives an explanation of permanent insurance and how it differs from term insurance. So let's take a look at the next slide to talk about the secret sauce. Okay, so the secret sauce to term and permanent is a lot. Sometimes people tend to think of these different types of policies as competitive. Should I get term, or should I get whole or permanent insurance? And they're looking at it as something that they have to make a choice between. And I would tell you that the way that we approach the different types of policies and what they can do for you is about making a plan that best fits you. Okay, so we aim to build a plan that works for you and your family, and provides you with the coverage that you need in an affordable way, because affordability is the most important part of insurance. You should have an insurance to last you a lifetime. Why? Many of you may not know. Once you hit 80 years old, and 90% of insurance companies will not insure you. So, I've heard and seen cases where people like to buy term insurance because it's cheap and they buy it their whole lives. And once they get to 60, they might be able to buy another 20-year term that takes them up to 80. And then they didn't realize that once they got to be 80, they wouldn't be able to buy insurance anymore. But yes, insurance does cut you off. There are some companies, I know of at least one, that will insure you up to age 85. But obviously, if you're going to wait that long for insurance, your insurance is going to be pretty high. And there are no more term life insurance policies available at that point. At that point, you have to get the permanent policies, which, like I said, cost more. So you should have a life insurance policy to last you a lifetime, and the best time to get it is always going to be now. It is always going to be less expensive today than it is tomorrow. Age is a factor in life insurance. You use your permanent policy to cover your life for the needs that you will always have, no matter how old you are. Okay. But a term policy can be used in conjunction with a permanent policy. What do you use that for? To cover the things in your life that have a term. Now, you probably don't think of your kids as having a term, but they do. There is a period of time for which you are financially responsible for them. And after that period of time, you expect them to be financially responsible for themselves. So your kids have a term, just like your mortgage does. When you buy that house, most of us have to take out a mortgage, and in most cases, we sign a mortgage that says we agree to pay this thing for 30 years. That's a term. So when you are buying, or when you're looking at life insurance or building a life insurance plan, you can combine the permanent insurance and the term insurance to basically be able to build coverage for you that is affordable and takes care of all of your financial responsibilities, which is more or less what life insurance is designed to do. The idea and the goal, of course, is to work smarter and not harder. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so living benefits. I mentioned living benefits earlier, and that's a term that's relatively, I'm going to say it's relatively new in the life insurance field. So how many people know the number one cause for bankruptcy in America? If you know it, go ahead and type it in the chat. The number one cause for bankruptcy in America. Anybody? Medical, okay? Medical bills, okay? Okay, yep, medical bills. Everybody knows medical bills or lack of medical insurance. So maybe sometimes, yeah. So medical bills. Medical bills is the number one cause of bankruptcy in America. And let me just paint you a picture and say how this plays out. You work, you have a nice job. On your job, you have life insurance. That's great. Then you find out that you have a major illness, cancer or stroke, right? That comes into your life. And you're sick. And you're sick for a long period of time. Now, surely on your job, if you have a good job, you might be able to have some short-term coverage or, like disability coverage, or maybe even some long-term disability coverage. But at some point, if you're sick enough, you'll find yourself without a job. That also means you'll find yourself without life insurance if your job's life insurance is the only one that you have. So now you have, if you're on disability, you have less money than you used to have coming into your household. Disability usually only pays about 60% of what you were earning. So most people can't afford to have 40% of their income stripped away from them, but that's what's happening. You're ill. Now you have less income coming in and you have more bills because you're ill. You've been going back and forth to the doctor. You've had to take tests, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have here, and this happens to so many families in America, is you have this squeeze. There's less money and more bills. And let's say that you fight your way through whatever the illness is and you come out on top. Yeah, you're alive. You fought for your life. And that's a good thing. You're living. But now you're living with all of these bills and with this pay that's been diminished or maybe is non-existent at this point. So that happens so much in America that it is the number one cause of bankruptcy. That's why many families find themselves in that position where they have to declare bankruptcy because they got all these bills that they just can't pay. So the life insurance companies recognized that, and so they began to add into their policies, not all of them, but some of them, and most certainly the ones that I work with first and foremost, what we call living benefits. Living benefits are additional benefits that are a part of the policy, and they cover cases of chronic illness, critical injury, or terminal illness. So the big four: cancer, heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, are covered under these policies. What do I mean by covered? It allows you to access a portion of the face value of your policy while you are alive. And when I say face value, that is the number that we often throw out where somebody says, do you have insurance? And you say, yes, I have $1 million worth of insurance, or I have a $100,000 policy. Those numbers, that's the face value of your policy. That means that's the amount that the insurance company is saying they'll pay out in the event of your death. So with living benefits, if you qualified, or basically if you had one of these qualifying illnesses, they allow you to access a portion of that face value, a portion of that $1 million, when, it's going to be based on the severity of your illness, but it allows you to access a portion of that money while you are still alive. what are you going to use the money for? Do you have to use it for medical bills? Do you have to use it to pay for doctors? No, absolutely not. You may use that money, of course, to pay for your medical bills if that's what you want to do. You can use that money to keep food on your table. You can use that money to begin to have, to kind of supplement the 40% that you're not getting from your disability benefits. You can use that money to go take the trip to Africa that you always wanted to take. You can use the money to set up a trust for your children. You can use that money for whatever you wish. And again, in most cases, you're able to access that tax-free. But living benefits allow you as the insured to actually be able to see some of the benefits of what you've been paying for, as opposed to all of the benefits going to your beneficiaries. And I'm going to pause here as well to say, you can go to the next slide, because we've already gone over that. I'm going to pause here and say that someone mentioned the issue of long-term care. So there are long-term care can be handled in a couple of different ways. One way is that you can have a separate long-term care policy that's just long-term care. Living benefits is actually a way that long-term care is integrated right into the life insurance policy. Because when you're talking about a chronic illness, that would be something perhaps that maybe you need to, be in some type of assisted living facility or a nursing home. And so being able to access those benefits while you are alive, you're able to do that through your policy. So it provides a type of long-term care integrated into this same life insurance policy. And so, that's why I love these things. I love what I do, because it just provides so many benefits in so many ways for you to be able to get what you need to live. So last things I'll say about the living benefits is that with most of the companies that I work with, the living benefits are available on our permanent and on our term policies. So whereas in the case of term policies in the past, you didn't see any benefits, or you were never going to see any benefits if you didn't die within the term. With these type of policies with the living benefits, if you happen to have this type of a major illness, you can get living benefits from your term policy. Also, 9 out of 10, you're going to have a higher face value on your term policy than you do on your permanent policy. So it makes a great deal of sense. It's so much better to be able to access, say, 50% of, $800,000 as opposed to 50% of $100,000. And, access to more money is a good thing. So, and then last thing I should say, you can double dip. If things are, that way, or just you want access to the cash, you can actually access it from your term policy, and you can access from your permanent policy on the same illness. So there's a lot of great benefits to what these policies definitely have to offer. So we're going to move on to the big question that everybody has for me all the time. How much will life insurance cost me? That's a great question. And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know, because I'm not a human calculator. I don't go around and carry these things in my head. But I do know that it won't get any cheaper. Life insurance, of course, like I said, is based partially on your age. And every day we're getting older. There's not one day that we're turning that clock backwards. And also, life insurance is based on your health conditions. And if anybody who's over 40 knows that, you can wake up, you can be fine one day, and the next day you wake up with some ache or pain that you didn't have yesterday. So health conditions tend to creep up on us as we age. And so the best time to get a policy is always now. That's going to be the best time to get a policy. So every case is different. Every family's needs are different. But the thing to remember is that affordability is the key. And what I mean by that is, it does not do you any good. It doesn't do me any good. It does nobody any good for you to have a life insurance policy that you can't afford. So whatever you do when you're thinking about it and you're looking at it, even if your need is, oh, I really need $1 million in coverage. If you can't afford to get $1 million in coverage, it is still worthwhile to get the $500,000 that you can afford, or whatever amount it is that you can afford. You can always add to life insurance later, but once something has happened to you, we can't turn the clock back. You can't go back to age 20 and get that 20-year policy. We can't turn the clock back and get you a policy before you realize that you had this illness come on. As an agent, I've definitely had that happen. I've had people who were, in perfect health. We were talking about getting a policy. They never executed. And then before I know it, they've got some major illness. And I'm not going to say that they wouldn't be able to get it, but they're not going to be able to get it for the same price. So definitely the cost of insurance is going to be based on a number of factors. But most importantly, it's important that it's affordable for you. So I'm your agent for life. And if you know me or do business with me, you will see that I sign my letters and stuff like that I'm your agent for life. I mean that because I develop a good, strong relationship with all of my clients. And not only that, I try to make sure that I have all kinds of services and resources that they can use and utilize over the course of their lives and everything to try to make sure that their whole life is taken care of. At this point, I'm just going to remind you that there's an amen corner over here. And if you're feeling an amen in your spirit right now, go ahead and put your camera over that QR code and sign up. Let me know you want to talk to me. We can move on to the next slide. I see the questions coming over there. I thank you, everybody, for asking questions. Okay, so sounds great. I'll apply online. Okay.
Are you ready to answer some questions before you move forward?
We can, but I mean, I figured we had a Q&A time too. So
yeah, you almost at your Q&A time. So if everybody's okay, keep putting them in the chat room. I see some hands up, Mr. Johnson. I will call on you, and then I will go to the questions in the chat. She's in about 10 minutes. I'll be opening it up. So let's go ahead, Mrs. Morgan.
Okay. You want to read them or shall I?
I can read them.
Okay.
So let's take a couple that's already in the chat. Let me go down. Miss Graves asks, what kind of face value would you need to get living benefits of $2,000 a month, and how long would it last?
So that's a great question, but it's a very specific question. In the same way that I can't tell you how much life insurance is.
The amen.
Yeah, you need to hit the amen button right there. You need to hit the amen corner.
Another question is, I lapsed in my term life insurance. What happens? Do you get your money back?
There's an old adage that says, once we have your money, you never get it back. So if you lapsed on your term insurance, especially, no, you're not going to get your money back because the insurance company did still provide you coverage at that time. If you lapsed on it, sometimes with term insurance, usually now, I was going to say sometimes there's a way that they'll try to work something out for you to be able to get back in. And obviously depends on how long it's been. But typically with term is, it's very much like apartment living. If you ain't pay your rent, they putting you out. It's just what it is.
Okay. So then, like an apartment, Ms. Sharp says, like an apartment lease, can you extend your term life policy?
So there aren't extensions of term policies, but, say, for example, if you were 20 years old, you bought a 20-year term, now you're 40, can you buy another one? Yeah. And that's more of what they're going to want to do. They're not going to extend to you a 20-year-old's price for an additional, 20 years. Now they're going to come back, reevaluate you as a 40-year-old and say, okay, we can offer you this price. In the course of that 20 years, you could have gone from being a very healthy person to having developed, 3 or 4 life-changing illnesses. So no, they're not going to miss that opportunity to reevaluate you for where you are, and charge you accordingly for what they now, knowing that you have these comorbidities, they may have made some different calculations on how long they think that you'll live, which, I mean, in the basic and cruelest of terms, that's what life insurance is. They're playing a numbers game on how long they think you're going to live. But, like I said, they're playing a numbers game. You can too, because life insurance is about you getting the money to provide financial security for your family when you are no longer here to provide a paycheck.
Okay, and before I ask the next questions that's in the chat, I'm going to ask Mr. Michael Johnson. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. I was wondering, is there, at least with the companies you deal with as a broker, is there a minimum, I guess, term or length policy for permanent insurance that you know of? And the reason I asked is because I kind of researched this years ago, and the figures in conjunction with the term of the policy that were provided to me at that point was just something that I couldn't commit to, financially, with other things on the plate. Is there like a minimum out there in the marketplace? 5 years? I was immediately thrown a 30 year policy, and I know you can't break them. I thought you were going to segue off the question about the lapse and what happens on perm, but going back to my original, is there like a standard across the marketplace that says you won't find a perm policy less than 20 years or 10 years or 5 years? And and how would that influence the premium?
So I'm a little bit unclear on what you're asking. Are you asking, is there a minimum amount that every term policy has to be at least this small amount, or
not the amount, but the length of the policies?
Okay, so term policies.
I'm sorry, not term, permanent.
Permanent. Okay, so again, are you referring to a minimum amount that permanent policies are?
No, policy length, or how long?
Permanent policies are permanent.
You pay for them, okay.
So let me. So they are permanent policies, meaning that they should provide you coverage your entire life. So if it's written well, and there are a number of ways that it's one of the things I love, but it's kind of hard to explain. But you might be in a situation where let me explain it this way. There are a lot of ways for you to write a permanent policy, right? Mm-hmm. But permanent policies are meant to be permanent. Now, if you were saying to me, my objective is I want to, I don't really want to save money. I need the coverage for the rest of my life. I can write it in a certain way. Typically, we try to write it so that it will serve you up to age 120. That's typically what we try to do in the market, because that's a number that we feel nobody's going to outlive. Okay, 120. But if you were young, right? If you were, very young in your 20s, or if you were a child, I would write it so that you only paid for it up to age 65, but the policy should still carry you to 120. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, and regardless of your age, I could write it so that you only pay it up to age 65. But if you were 45, that gives you only a 20-year window. And so that makes the fees grow higher. If I say, well, we'll write it till you pay it till you're 85, that will lessen it. If I say you're going to pay it all your life, that will lessen it. So, there's a lot of levers that you can move when you're building a permanent policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Pretty much you're saying you do have flexibility in determining how long and which one will pay that premium on that policy.
Absolutely.
Which absolutely then doesn't segue into the influence the actual premium. But first is, how long do you foresee yourself paying this premium is what we got to get to.
Yeah, that's definitely a question. And if that's something important to you, when we talk, mention that. I don't want to have to be paying this policy for the rest of my life. I only want to pay up until I'm 75 or something like that. And we can write it and adjust it. Permanent policies do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how they're built. And again, it's important to have somebody who knows and understands that, and and also is knowing and understanding you and what your needs are. That's why, I always say it's just a very personalized sort of thing, and it should be, because it should be designed for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So some more questions. I'll give you 2 more, and then I'll let you go to the rest of your presentation, and I'll come back with the rest of them. So Tawana Reed wrote, also, do you work with AARP life insurance policies, term or life? Their premium fees start off fairly low. Wondering if that is just for term.
Okay, so AARP actually works with specific companies. AARP itself doesn't write life insurance. They work with specific companies. And I'm trying to remember who they work with.
And you had something that followed up that I read it backwards. So the first part of it was, are there any fees when you take from the insurance policies? Will you have to repay back like a loan?
Okay, so that's a good question as well. And I'm not sure which I want to answer first. I do not work with AARP. They work with specific companies. I probably have access to the companies that they work with, but I can tell you right now, they are not the top companies that I work with. And the reason for that is because I like to have the living benefits. AARP isn't concerned about that. Their population is older, and they know that their population is primarily looking to make sure that they have life insurance. They're not worried about living benefits. So are there fees for taking money out? You can take a loan from your accumulated cash value. Usually there will be a small fee associated with it. It might be like $50 or something like that. You can choose whether or not you want to pay the money back. It's smart to do so if you're able to, but you can also choose not to. And that will begin to affect either the face value of your policy or the amount that you pay in your policy. So permanent policies can provide a stable, amount of money that you pay into it. But when you start dealing with the accumulated cash value or taking money out, or whether you put it back in, that does begin to fluctuate your premium, which is the money that you pay every month, or the face value of your policy. So those things can adjust in the life of a permanent policy.
Okay. Let's see what take. Well, if you are fully vaccinated, will you receive a discount on your insurance premium now?
I saw that question and I laughed. I wish that were true. I wish that were true, but no, it's not. There's nothing. I will say that, some life insurance companies, because it was also new, they were very cautious about what they were doing about COVID. Very early on, there were some companies that, if you had even been exposed to somebody who had COVID, they would not approve your policy. I never had that happen to one of my clients, but it happened in the industry. So they were very cautious in terms of how they were dealing with this. The more we see this, the more we handle it, the more we get a better understanding about COVID. They're beginning to relax some of their restrictions. I haven't heard of any things like people being denied because they had COVID or been exposed to somebody. I haven't heard anything like that recently. So things are definitely getting better, but is it affecting anybody's rates? Absolutely not.
Okay. And your last question, thank you for that. And thank you for the questions, everyone.
Really good question.
Or should Miss MS, I'm assuming it's MS, to everyone, said, can or should whole life or permanent policies be paid in full up front?
That's entirely up to you. They can be paid up front. If you would like to, does that provide you with certain benefits? I mean, we can write policies to where you pay them, up to your 120 or 80 or whatever age you want to be. There are what we call 7-pay policies, where you just pay the money every year. You pay it for 7 years, and then that policy is paid up. There is a way to do a lump sum one-time payment for policy as well. So that's really entirely up to you as an individual, and whether or not it's beneficial to you to do so, or whichever approach is beneficial to do so. Obviously, for most clients, it helps them to be able to pay it on a monthly basis. But for some, some will have, some are able to do lump sum payments, and you can do that. I am not 100% sure that you can do that on a term policy, although I have a hard time believing insurance companies are going to say no to large sums of money. So.
Okay, so we'll go to the next slide now.
Okay. Actually, let me talk about this slide for a second.
I mean, sorry, that's what the slide I meant to say. We'll go to the slide.
So I just want to add a note about applying online. This is something, we all like to do. We love to be able to, just go online and, I'll figure it out. That's great. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an online application. In fact, if you looked at my website, you'll see I have access to an online application where you can kind of select a company and apply online. But I will tell you this, I think that it will do you a world of good to sit down and talk with somebody first, to have some greater insight, because there are some things that you don't know what you're getting online. If it was so easy to do, there's a reason why every state requires people who are in the life insurance industry, or why it requires a license. And part of that is we really need to know. Sure, I will try to share your QR code, or I will share the link to where the QR code goes in the chat. We know things, and one of the things that we know is really the companies that we work for and where their sweet spots are. I know company A does not like dealing with people who have more than 2 illnesses, and company B can still deal with you if you have 2 illnesses or even 3. So when I talk about, finding a company that's a good fit for you, that's what I'm talking about. It's my job to know the companies and to understand your story, and then make those 2 things fit together. You're not going to get that with online. Online, basically, you're saying, yeah, just want the cheapest price, and if you want cheap, you can have cheap. There's nothing wrong with cheap. Cheap doesn't mean that it's easy. If you want it easier, it might not be cheap. So choices, chances, consequences. What can I say? So we can move to the next slide. And the next slide simply has my contact information. Oh no, go back.
Sorry, I'm moving backwards.
So for the person who asked for the link to the QR code, that is it right in the very first part, where it says calendly.com/missinsurance/consult. That's the link that goes to the QR code. Obviously, we've been stressing the whole day. Send your questions and your comments. We'll definitely talk about them. You can find Miss Insurance Agency on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Miss Insurance MD. Our website and our phone number are also there. So if you still have questions that we don't get to today, or like I said, you just want to sit down and talk with me a little bit, I definitely use the amen button, or you can go directly to the link that's being shared there. I think there was one other thing I wanted to add. I did want to tell you this. We have a service in our company, or in our agency, particularly for those who purchase life insurance. It's called our Premier Service. And so we were talking a little bit earlier today about final wishes. We were talking about specifically, mom wants to say what dress she wants to be buried in, and, how she wants the service to go, and things of that nature. So we actually have a questionnaire that we go over. It's complimentary. It's a free part of the service that we do. It's like I said, for any client that purchases a life insurance policy, they're enrolled in our Premier Service program. So we go through all of that for you. We provide the document, type it up, and send it to you for you to have to keep with your other documents, such as your will and advanced directives. Another thing that that we do as part of Premier Service is if you provide to us, folks who you would like to be contacted in the event of your death, we step in as soon as, we hear about the event. We will go through and call those people and help to notify your friends. Everybody has family members or whomever might be, taking care of their funeral or whatever, but they might not know all of your friends. So, like say, for example, if your parents had to take care of it, sure, your parents know all your family, but maybe you have a lot of friends or, members of other organizations that you would want to be notified. And we help provide that service for all of our customers. So just wanted to let you guys know that like some of these things that we've been talking about are also a part of our services as an agency. Because like I said, we're your agent for life. We are here to help you through all of the different types of needs that you have. And if we don't know, we'll find out.
Okay. Now it's time for some more questions related to insurance. And we also, if it's okay with Ms. Morgan, we can also open up to the others, if that's okay.
If whatever our time frame is, that's fine. I just want to make sure, and everybody else, I'm sure, wants to make sure that we get to the giving gifts part.
So one of the questions I see, Ms. Pam Jenkins asked, and thank you, Ms. Pam Jenkins, you have literally asked questions for every section, and we are happy that you're enjoying it. I know I am enjoying this. I'm sure everybody else is, but I love to see these questions come in. And Ms. Jenkins says, what is the minimum time you have to have a term policy before they will pay death benefits for funerals, etc.?
Term policies actually, we don't have those restrictions. So if you've been approved for a term policy, you should be able to receive death benefits if you died the next day. Once your policy has been approved, you've signed your paperwork and all that kind of stuff. With the one caveat that I would say, term, or rather all life insurance policies, there used to be a thing where they didn't pay out for suicide. That also is no longer a thing, but there is a 2-year period for suicide if death is by suicide. But you shouldn't have a problem with a life insurance policy paying its death benefits. Once you have been approved for that policy, you've paid your premium, you signed all the paperwork, and signed receipt of your policy.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. We've kind of addressed, we did. Oh, this question is for the attorney. Is she aware of a good attorney in New Jersey that would be good for estates, POAs, etc.? Do you have any recommendations, basically?
No, I do not. I just don't know of anyone. So, I wouldn't want to recommend anyone that I don't personally know, right? But I can give you some good ideas of ways to kind of help you sort through attorneys when you're looking for someone that you think might meet your needs. You definitely want to read reviews, various reviews, right? Attorneys will have reviews on Google. They will have reviews on avvo, avvo.com, okay? But also if you're looking for a specific wills and trust attorney in New Jersey, I really wish I did. I have more referrals for immigration at this point than I do for family law, but that's something that I'm working on.
What is your advice? Thank you. This is for Ms. Insurance. What is your advice for taking out insurance policies out on other people, siblings, parents, etc.? Mr. Johnson, was this the question you was raising your hand for? Because I was just about to call on you.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the insurance industry, for all types of insurance, even your auto insurance, you have to have an insurable interest. So what that means is you have to be impacted if that person died. So for example, I can't go and take out a life insurance policy on, say, Donald Trump, because I don't have any insurable. I don't have any interest in his, whether he lived or he died, it doesn't affect my life, right? So you have to be able to have an insurable interest. Additionally, if you're talking about insuring adults, right? typically what will happen is the adult person, what we would call the insured, has to be willing to allow you to pay for the policy. But typically, you're not going to be able to own the policy, but you can pay for the policy. If they're an adult and they don't have any like mental deficiencies or anything like that, typically they have to be the owner of the policy, even if they're not the payer of the policy. And so what the difference between that is, the owner of the policy is able to name the beneficiaries. And beneficiaries can be changed at any point, any time that the owner of the policy decides they want to make a change. So, you know, if you had an agreement with somebody, okay, I'm going to get this life insurance policy for you, I'll pay for it, and you just make me the beneficiary, they can turn around, you know, the next month and change the beneficiary to whomever, and you're not going to know about it because you're not the owner. So, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, if you are in a situation where you have you know, parents, now parents, you have an insurable interest on, your children and your grandchildren. Those are typically people who you can buy policies for: your spouse, your parents, your children, your grandchildren. Siblings, a little bit different. But if you have a sibling who, you know, you feel like they, you know, just never going to be in a position where they're going to be able to do this for themselves, and, you know, the family's going to be looking at me, there, you know, if the sibling is willing, you know, that is something that can be worked out.
Yeah, it was geared more. The sibling was just an example, but the question was geared more to parents.
Yeah, you can definitely.
If you have parents that don't, you know, they don't take the steps to plan properly, and you know, even if it's a minimum policy, just to have a minimum funeral. I'm just trying to think ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no, we had to do the same thing for our parents. All of my siblings together, we did that. We have and I have some policies that are really just funeral policies. And they have specific advantages to just basically being able to provide income or to provide money for the funeral service. They're great policies. It's a wonderful company. You know, but in a lot of cases, you know, obviously parents are going to be older. You know, they might be 60 or 70 years old. You're definitely going to want to make sure that they have something. And, you know, even if it's not, you know, a big $100,000 policy, it might just be a $10,000 policy. But that's definitely available. Just keep in mind, especially when you're talking about parents, with the one company I work with, 85 is the cutoff. So if they're over 85, there's nothing that we can do to get them insured.
And then, I don't want to bog the meeting, but can you just quickly answer? You mentioned insurable interest. So if you are purchasing for a parent, and you mentioned that, you know, they pretty much have say so, they can change the policy. Is that still the case for if you have an insurable interest?
If you have an insurable interest, you can be an owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, this has been awesome. I'll take the last question for the day. Please forgive us. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go and take this moderator privilege and let this last question be, because it is 2:04 and we like to be respectful of time. Ms. Sharp, go ahead, and speakers, read that comment in there, as well as everyone else from Ms. Reed. That is unfortunate. Yes, Ms. Sharp.
Yes, my question is more of a brother-in-law who's not quite living right in the streets, and you know that he may not make it, you know, with his lifestyle. I'm just trying to get clarity. Will I be able to insure him with an insurance that will take care of a funeral if something came up?
Is your sibling who's married to him able to do so? Because they certainly can.
He is, but I'm not sure if he's willing, because he doesn't want the headache
of paying for it, or
dealing with him, period.
Oh, tell you what, amen corner. Let's talk about it.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it.
Amen corner.
Amen corner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And the amen corner is in the link. Ms. Reed has it right. We're going to do a stretch. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to show the speaker context so that you can see it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a brief second and hand the screen over to Ms. Morgan from Ms. Insurance, who's going to do a drawing. And then I'll come back and do our closing remarks and share the contacts for you as well. So, Ms. Morgan, I'll stop sharing my screen so that you may share the drawing.
Okay. I'm going to put this up here. I believe that I've gotten everybody's name in here. And, you know, at this point, I think it's just about everybody who's been on the call altogether. So we have 3 prizes.
We have 3 prizes.
The first winner of the day is going to be, oh, Zoom quit.
Rose,
were you able to see me?
I can see you.
Okay, so
you started sharing your screen.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on.
Sometimes I think Zoom decides to quit and break up this relationship of distance learning. Is tired of all of us. Our kids are on distance learning. We're on distance learning. Zoom has decided that it has decided they don't care what's going on. The pandemic is now with the computer. It's done.
Okay.
So
am I back or?
You're back, but you're not sharing your screen.
Okay, let me try sharing the screen again because I did get a message that Zoom quit unexpectedly. So can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, and there's the wheel.
There's the wheel. So did you all hear the wheel go back the first time?
Nope.
Okay, all right, then let's do this again. Let's go. Team, who's gonna be our winner?
First winner will be
Tia Dowdery. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Tia Dowdery.
All right. Make sure to write that down. Miss Tia's gonna want her prize. All right. So we're gonna remove her name from the list and we're gonna spend one more time. Woohoo!
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones.
Yay, Jessica Jones.
Big winner, Jessica Jones. Congratulations, Ms. Jones. Thank you for participating and thank you for being a part of this seminar today. And for our last winner of the day, definitely last but not least, we're going to see who's going to win our third prize. It is Kiera Vincent.
All right.
So congratulations to our 3 winners. You'll be receiving an email from me. I have some gift certificates that we'll be handing out. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. And I will put in the chat where you can find the wheel is the wheel of names.
Yep.
Especially if you were a school teacher, that would be like the best things inside bread. And so I will now present with closing. I'm going to keep this up. Do you need me to? I see it's already been put in there. Thank you. Everyone has the contact. Here are their contacts, as you can see. And I will go into closing remarks. So on behalf of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Tau Delta Zeta Chapter, I, Tawana Lane, on behalf of our organization, would like to say thank you for attending the Education and Scholarship Estate Learning. We appreciate it. We hope that you will attend more of our events. If you have not done so already, we do have an event coming up for our scholarship event where we'll highlight the seniors in Prince George's County, those winners of our Power of the Written Word and our Lynette Thomas Scholarship. It will be April 24th next weekend. And you please check out our Facebook page, check out our Instagram page. And if you're interested, please buy one of our $15 tickets to this event. Thank you. Enjoy your day, your afternoon. We hope you had a lot, you've learned a lot, and we hope to see you again. Thanks, everyone. And to our speakers, thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you. Have a great, safe, and enjoyable afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
It was great. Bye.